Well, if you have your Bible, go ahead and grab that and turn with me to 1 Peter chapter 5. Be in 1 Peter chapter 5 this morning. I want to mention one thing before I get into the message. Been talking about what we want to do this summer. Normally, if you're new-ish here, preach through books of the Bible. That's our plan. We just take that as our pattern and go right through different books of the Bible. And I think I may go back to 2 Peter, but I don't want to do that in the summer. The summer is not a good time to start a new book study. So think about what we want to do this summer. I want to go revisit something that we did a lot of years ago. You have to be here for at least, I don't even know, 13, 14, 15 years. I don't know, to remember when we did this. But one summer called 9 Questions. That was basically just we polled the church. We just asked you, what are some burning questions that you have, either about theology, about the Bible, about ethics or morality, or whatever the case might be. And we had to submit those questions, not like open Q&A, like I'm standing up here, and if you have a question or whatever, that's cool and that's fine. We may do some of that too as part of it. But really submit those questions, let us sort of collect them all together and use that to form the basis of a series over the summer that we're doing. We'll kind of trade and take turns, and several of us can preach and bring a message based on those questions you might ask. And we do that because, we just want to know what it is that you're dealing with. What's burning on your heart? What are questions that you've had, about the Bible that somehow just don't ever seem to have been answered or whatever. So it needs to be something that we could reasonably hope to answer or address in probably 1 to 2 maximum. There might be a question deep enough that we need to go 2 weeks or something on it. I could foresee that. But we'll pick that based on what you give. And so be looking for that. We're going to probably take those a couple of different ways. We may do some through the app, where you can just click through the app and submit that question that way. We may put it in the bulletin, let you tear that out and put it in the offering box there at the back when you're giving your offering, if you bring it in person and not online. And so we'll have that coming before you here in the coming next week or 2 weeks maximum, so that we can start that sometime in June. But about 2 weeks ago, we finished looking at calibrating our expectations of a pastor or an elder. We took 2 weeks to look at that from 1 Peter. And now Peter is coming to the close of the book. And as he closes with this series of 3 strong challenges that he brings to the church. There's 3 challenges that he ends this book with. He talks about humbling ourselves before the mighty hand of God and casting our cares on him because he cares for us. He talks about resisting the devil. That's the second one. And then the third one is standing firm in the true grace of God. Those are the 3 challenges he's going to close this book. And as I looked at the month of May and some of the weeks that we have ahead of us, from Mother's Day to Graduate Recognition Sunday, I thought that this lines up perfectly with what I would want to say on those days. And so it sets it up really well for us to finish this book out, Joe and Sarah, not in the 1 or 2 weeks I promised, but just like you predicted, a little bit longer than that. But it sets up so well, with one exception. I have to flip the order of the first 2, okay? I'm going to flip the order of those first 2 challenges. I'll do the second one today and the first one next week. And the reason for that is because I don't want to preach about resisting the devil on Mother's Day, okay? I'm a little scared of how our moms might apply that and who they might apply that to. I want to make sure we're talking about the right devil, not the one that you bore, okay? So that's the plan. So we'll next week, and this is unexpected thinking about it this way. Next week we're going to talk on Mother's Day about humbling yourself before the mighty hand of God, and casting your cares on a God who cares. What a perfect message for Mother's Day. And then the next week, as we look at Graduate Recognition Sunday, how perfect is it that as these students are about to leave high school, potentially leave college, go out into the world, go where they're going to be not so much necessarily surrounded by all the things that they were familiar with, those safety nets that people grew up around, how important is it to hear a challenge to stand firm in the true grace of God. And so that'll be the message on our Graduate Recognition Sunday. And so that's what we're going to do. So if you have your Bible open, we're going to look at verses 6 through 11 this morning. And so if you're there, the Bible says this: "Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you, casting all your anxieties on him. Why? Because he cares for you. Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Resist him, firm in your faith, knowing that the same kinds of suffering are being experienced by your brotherhood throughout the world. And after you have suffered for a little while, the God of all grace, who has called you to his eternal glory in Christ, will himself restore, confirm, strengthen, and establish you. To him be the dominion forever and ever. Amen. What I want to look at today is that second challenge, resisting the devil. I want to talk about resisting the devil today. Now, when we talk about the devil, when you hear the word devil, it conjures up a lot of different ideas and a lot of different people. There are some people that go straight to the ridiculous. The first place our mind goes is to the ridiculous. This is that caricature of the devil that you may have gotten on like Looney Tunes or some kid's cartoon, where the devil is portrayed as this horned red creature that carries a pitchfork around, set on fire, whatever it might be, or possibly some scary looking monster for some modern horror movie that you may have seen or whatever. But it's straight to ridiculous stuff that represent who the devil actually is and what the devil is actually like. In fact, the Bible says that the devil masquerades. In other words, he doesn't present himself to you as he really is, as an angel of light. And so the first place a lot of people's minds goes, and that's from culture, that's from movies, that's from cartoons, is to that caricature copy of the devil that you think about. But for other people, it doesn't go to the ridiculous. It goes really to the incredulous. It goes to the skeptical. There are people that when they hear someone talk about the devil, they immediately become skeptical because they find it hard to believe that there could be such a thing as something called the devil, some personal incarnation of evil. To them it is outrageous, and so they're skeptical, they're incredulous about it. So you have the ridiculous, you have the incredulous, and then there are those that see the devil behind every bush. You've met people like this. These are the people that attribute to the devil pretty much everything negative and wrong in the world. That they see the devil behind every evil, the devil behind every temptation, the devil behind every sinful act. Everything comes from him. And all of this, these different views about who the devil is, whether you disbelieve or whether you think about him a little bit too much, it reminds me of a quote from C.S. Lewis in a book called The Screwtape Letters. And if you've never read The Screwtape Letters, it's a short little book, but it's very powerful and very practical, and you should pick up a copy of it and read through it. But in the preface to The Screwtape Letters, C.S. Lewis said there are two equal and opposite errors into which our race can fall about the devils. One is to disbelieve in their existence. The other is to believe and to feel an excessive and unhealthy interest in them. They themselves, meaning the devils, are equally pleased by both errors and hail a materialist or a magician with the same delight. In other words, the devil doesn't care whether you believe in him or not. Your belief in him does not affect his schemes or his strategies at all. And so I think the place for us to start today is just with a very simple statement. I want to start with a very simple statement that I trust that we can all get behind and agree with and believe. And it is this: we have an enemy that the Bible calls the devil. Can we believe that this morning? Do you believe that we have an enemy the Bible calls the devil? You can take that even from 1 Peter chapter 5, starting in verse 8, where Peter calls him your adversary, the devil. Your adversary, the devil. Now, the devil is not his name, right? We know that. When God created the devil, whatever this being is called, when God created him, he did not name him devil the way that my parents named me Josh. It didn't go like that. The devil is not his name. The devil is more about his role. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But you may also see him referred to in the Bible as Satan. You've all heard him called Satan before. And contrary to what a lot of people believe, Satan is also probably not a proper name. He did not name him Satan upon his creation or birth or whatever you want to call it. No, Satan is also his role. It's a description of his role. And again, we're going to get to that in a minute. In fact, everywhere you see him referred to in the Bible, it is by these descriptive names about him. Even the name Lucifer. How many of you have heard the name Lucifer? And you might call him, you might think that that is a proper name, but Lucifer is just a description. Again, it means something like a shining one or a morning star. Again, like I said, Satan masquerades as an angel of light. So he doesn't show up like a goat-headed, scary monster. He disguises as something that is beautiful, something that's awe-inspiring, right? Something like an angel of light. But all those words are descriptors of how he is and what he does. Now we know that he first shows up in the Bible in the Garden of Eden in Genesis chapter 3. You remember the story? He shows up in the form of a serpent to tempt Adam and Eve to eat the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's a mouthful if you ever have to stand in front of anybody and say it out loud. It's harder than it looks. But he stands there and he tempts them to eat of that tree. And after that, he shows up not all over the place in the Bible. That's why we don't have an unhealthy interest of him. We're aware of him, but he shows up in scattered ways the Bible and other places. You can think about the book of Job, where Satan goes into the presence of God and requests that he might go down and test Job, God's servant Job. You may remember the story in Chronicles where Satan shows up with David, and it says there that Satan incited David to take that census, for which he later got in trouble for. So you see these instances in the Bible of Satan or the devil or Lucifer or whatever showing up, but it's always for the same purpose. No matter what the context is, the purpose is always the same. He's always there to tempt people to turn their backs on God. He's always there to tempt people to disbelieve, to lose their faith, and to do then, because of that, to do their own thing. You're going to hear me. If you're here any amount of consistency at Gowensville, you will often hear me preaching hard against your way instead of God's way. And one of the reasons for that is because whether you know it or not, if you're living your life God's way and ignoring God's way, then whatever you're living for, you're actually living in line with the agenda, plans, and schemes of the devil. It's hard to imagine that, but that's true. If you think, I just like to do my own thing. I like to make my own decisions. I like to make my own choices. I like to my own path. If that's you, whether you know it or not, you're in line and in step with the agenda of the devil. You are not living in freedom the way that you think you are. No, you are living bound to the plans of the enemy. So the second thing I want to make sure that you understand is the devil is a created being who rebelled against God, but he is not co-equal with God. You realize that? He is a created being who rebelled against God. He's not co-equal with God. The devil, in other words, he's not like the yang to God's yin. If you look at some Eastern religions or whatever, he's not like, God is all light, and so we need a balancing force in the universe of darkness so that we can keep things in balance, kind of like some Star Wars sort of thing, keep the force balanced or whatever it might be. No, that is not how it plays out at all. The devil is not equal to God in any way. He is not equal to God in his knowledge. Do you know the devil is not omniscient? He does not know all things. There is one and only one being who is omniscient, and that is God Almighty. The devil is not omniscient. He's smart, he's crafty, he's wily. He's been around a little while, so he's seen some things, but he's not omniscient. He's also not omnipotent. You realize, as powerful as the devil might be, there is only one who is omnipotent, and that is God Almighty and not the devil. The devil is powerful. We're not going to lie about that. We're not going to minimize that, but he is not all powerful. He is limited in the scope of his power, praise the Lord, right? The third thing, and I mentioned this, I think it's important to know, the devil is not omnipresent. He cannot be but one place at one time, just like me, just like you, just like every other created thing. He's incapable of being all places at all times. And so, because of that, if the devil is dealing with you directly, I'm not sure what it says about you, but it must mean you're very important to his plans. Because of the fact that he is not omnipresent, he can only be one place at one time, I'm just taking a stab at this. He's probably not here. You've probably never directly dealt with the person of the devil, not in a one-to-one kind of a sense. And so when you think about the works of the devil and the schemes of the devil, you should think of him more like a general and less like a foot soldier, right? He's more like a general and less like a soldier. The general is the one that gives the orders, but he needs people working underneath him in order to carry those orders out, right? And so we find when we look in the Word that that's exactly what is. The reality of this is found in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12, where Paul says, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against," and notice these are all plural, "but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places." So what that tells us is there is an army of people working under the schemes of the devil to carry out the plans and desires of the enemy. And even though it says that these are spiritual forces that dwell in the heavenly places, Paul says somehow they interact with us in this world, that they're beings that we wrestle with in some way. So these are the minions to carry out the work of the devil. But you know, the devil doesn't just need spiritual forces to carry out his plans. How many of you understand that the devil can use people as well? Right? And there's two different senses in which the devil can use people. Sometimes the devil can possess people. We see stories of that throughout the New Testament, where a devil will actually, or a demon will actually take over the body and the mind of a person and the will of the person. That person comes under their control to be used directly for the forces of evil's purposes. But it doesn't just have to be active and fantastic like that. When I say fantastic, I don't mean in a good way. I mean more like supernatural almost. It doesn't have to be like that. How many of you know the devil can use you passively as well? Right? The devil has systems within this world. And so he can passively use us when we find ourselves caught up, blinded by, unaware of the systems of rule and power in this world that are not according to the things of God, but according to the devil himself. And people get caught in those systems, become pawns of those systems, and are used under the devil's control and influence. And I would say that's more the point in 1 Peter 5 right here. I'm not saying there was no one possessed, but I don't think that's what Peter's warning about directly here. I think it's more this. I think it's more a people, if you know the context and you've been with us in the study, you know what's been going on there. But it's more that there are a people who do not know Christ. They are not believers. They're not followers of Jesus. And they are, without even knowing it, serving the plans of the devil by being opposed to God and God's people through persecution. When you see persecution of God's people, you can always be sure that somewhere, whether it's conscious in the mind of the person or not, that the devil, that they are right along with the devil's schemes. Right? So that's what we're being warned about right here. But I want you to always keep in mind, always keep this in mind, no matter who is being used by the devil, used by the enemy, person or whatever, we need to keep in mind that the real enemy is the one behind the scenes, right? The real enemy is the adversary, the one behind the scenes. That's who Peter tells us here to be sober-minded about and to watch out for. And so all I want to do this morning, I just want to answer 3 questions from the text today. I want to talk about what is he trying to do, talking about the devil. What's he trying to do? How does he do it? And what should our response be? Okay? What's the devil trying to do? How does he do it? And what should our response be as believers? Number 1, what is the devil trying to do? Look at verse 8. He says, "Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour." So what does this tell us he's doing? Well, it says he is prowling. He prowls. That's how we translate that word. But if you go into the Greek, that word that's translated prowls here is actually just the word that means walking around. Just walking around. But the reason that we translate it prowls is because of what comes next. What he says after that. And he says that the devil prowls like a lion. Like a roaring lion. Now a lion is one of the apex predators on this earth. That means they are right at the top of the food chain. Apart from maybe men with guns or people with guns and maybe a crocodile or something, in their environment, there's nothing else that's preying on lions. They're apex. And so when lions hunt, you've never seen a lion just kind of walking around, just wandering around like, I wonder where I can get a bite to eat around here. Anybody know where I can get some? Just walk around. Now, what do? They prowl. When they're looking for something, they prowl. They stalk after their prey. And Peter said here, that's what the devil is doing. The devil is not just walking around, but is intentionally stalking and prowling. But why is he doing that? What is he stalking after? What is he looking for? He's looking for, notice what it says, someone, not something, someone to eat. How many of you know the devil doesn't eat tofu? The devil doesn't eat rice cakes. The devil doesn't eat vegetables. No, the devil is looking for someone to devour. That's what it says there. He's looking for someone to devour. And that word devour, it means something like to just gulp down. Almost like, the devil, when he finds his meal, the devil doesn't sit down like we do with a knife and a fork and just take a little bite and chew it up real nice, swallow it, digest it properly. No, he eats it like a predator, scares somebody's going to come take it out from under him. And that's what this word means. That word devour means just to gulp it, just to swallow it, barely even chew it. In fact, you can translate that same word, devour, you could translate it as drown, which gives you really the same sense, doesn't it? Because what is drowning? Drowning is when you're swept up, you're engulfed, you're overwhelmed by the water, and that's what he's saying about the devil. You're engulfed. He swallows you whole. And so what does that mean? Because obviously, the devil is not out there literally just eating people, right? It doesn't work like that. He's not out there eating us. So what is he trying to devour? Well, he's trying to devour our faith. That's it. That's the point. That is ultimately what the devil wants to do, not just in general, to personalize all that we're talking about this morning. That's what he wants to do with you, believer. If you know the Lord, what he wants to do is swallow your faith whole. All of his strategies in your life have that end in mind. And so you think about the context here for a minute. The context here is suffering, and particularly the suffering of persecution. Think about what is the point of that suffering and persecution that they're going through. Well, from God's perspective, it is to strengthen our faith so that we come out on the other side more pure and stronger in our faith than when we went into that trial. Whenever you go into a trial, it doesn't mean God brought that trial into your life. He did to happen, but he allowed it to happen for a purpose in his mind, what he wants to do with it, what he wants to accomplish in you through that. The Lord wants to strengthen your faith. But from the devil's perspective, the devil takes the same event, the same thing, and he has a different idea. He has a different perspective and different desire. And so from the devil's perspective, the point is not to strengthen your faith, the point is to shake your faith. The point is to get you to question God. The point is to get you to question his character, his love, his care, his protection, his goodness. And so if the devil can devour your faith that way, I want you to hear me on this. He doesn't care what happens after that. If he can get your faith, if he can devour your faith, he doesn't care. He does not care what happens next. It doesn't make any difference to the devil if you become an atheist. It doesn't make any difference to the devil if you convert to some other religion. It doesn't make any difference to the devil if you become a devil worshiper. If you grew up in the 80s, there was devil worship behind everything. We thought everything was a devil. And probably in hindsight, I bet it was. We made fun of it back then. I think there's a lot more to it than what I thought at the time. But he doesn't care whether you explicitly become a devil worshiper. It does not matter from his perspective if you go on after you lose faith, after you deconstruct, give it up. After that happens, he does not care if you then go on and just go live a nice life and go plant lots of trees and rescue puppies and kittens, and then you go, build an orphanage and, just live into old age. That's fine. As long as you don't, that's fine. He doesn't care if that's you or if you're the serial killer. Doesn't matter. It's all the same to him. The only point that he has is that you not keep the faith in Jesus. That's it. That's the strategy. Not keep the faith. And that in turn would lead you to give up following Jesus. And that is what Peter is warning against in the middle of their suffering and in the middle of their persecution here. And so you need to know this. Know the devil's intention for your life. You need to be able to recognize. That's why you're alert. That's why you're watching out. You need to be able to recognize his hand at work in the situations of your life where your faith is being tested and where it is being shaken. You have to be alert to that. You have to be watchful of that so that when you feel your faith begin to shrink and feel your faith begin to shrivel up because of something that's happening in your life, whether it be sin, whether it be suffering, whatever it might be, you can know where that is coming from. Whatever it is that you're experiencing. If the consequences of that are that your faith begins to shrink and shrivel, then you need to know that's not coming from the Lord. That is a strategy of the devil at work in your life. Because God, his testing of your faith is always for your strengthening. Second question, how does he do it? We know what he's doing. He's seeking to devour our faith so that we give up. How does he do that? I think if I took a poll of most people about the most common way that the devil works in people's lives, or demons, or whatever you want to call it, I think the first thing people would think about the devil's schemes is temptation. Don't you think? Don't you think that'd probably be foremost in people's minds would be temptation? That the devil is trying to devour our faith by tempting us to sin. And I believe that's true. I believe the devil does tempt us. I believe that's a part of it. But I want you to go beyond that. I want you to go beyond that. I think it's more than, in fact, I would say that even may rank low in the strategies of trying to tempt you to sin. Because you hear a lot of people, they blame the devil for their stumble. They blame the devil for their sin. Like it's the devil. The devil made me do it and he tempted me to do it. But you know what? You really don't need the devil to tempt you to sin. Your flesh is perfectly capable of that on its own, right? My flesh is always eager to do what I want to do and not do what God wants me to do. With or without a devil. So I want you to think below that, beyond that. And I'm going to put it like this. If you're in Christ, your sin is covered. Do you believe that? If you're in Christ, your sin's covered. It's been forgiven. It's been forgotten. The whole price of it was paid on the cross of Jesus Christ. That means God is not holding your sin against you anymore. That means there is Romans 8:1, there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. And so when Christians pursue God but fall into sin, what is the Spirit of God's response to you? What is the Spirit doing? Follower of Jesus, Christian, how many of you sinned already today? If you're honest, we're all raising hands, okay? We're all raising hands. I don't care how your morning started. You've been there. It's already happened. And so when you sin, when you fall into a pattern of sin in your life, what does the Spirit do? The Spirit comes along and convicts you of sin, correct? That's the Spirit's job. He comes and convicts us of sin. But not for no purpose, not to make us feel bad, but for what reason? That conviction is meant to lead you back to the gospel, where you find mercy and grace and help in your time of need, so that you might have the strength to turn away from it. That yes, I fell, yes, I stumbled, yes, I sinned, but the Spirit convicted, He led me to the cross, and he led me back to a place of repentance where I could be restored to my fellowship with God. That is what God does in the midst of our sin, and that is the gospel. And I would tell you this morning, that is what you need to be reveling in. That is what you need to glory in. That is what you need to rejoice in, and especially when you fall. Yes. Because you will fall. You've all already admitted that. You already did it today. You will fall at times. And when you do, when you fall, when you stumble, when you suffer, that's when the schemes of the devil really kick in. That's what I believe more and more. I believe he might tempt you on this side of your sin, but I believe the schemes kick into high gear on the other side of your sin. That's when the schemes really start. Because see, again, God allowed your stumbling. He allowed your sin. He allowed your suffering. And God wants to use that for his glory and ultimately for your good, whether you can see that or not in the moment. But the devil is on the other side of that, and he's that other voice that is speaking into the aftermath of whatever it is that you are dealing with. The aftermath of your sin, the devil steps in. The aftermath of suffering, the devil steps in, and he has a different message than the message of the Spirit of God in your life. And so while the Spirit is leading you back to the gospel, back to grace, back to repentance, back to restoration, the devil is, on the other hand, speaking accusations and slander into your life. That's what he does on the other side of your sin. That word adversary, it means to bring formal charges against someone, to accuse. You ever heard the devil being called the accuser? That's what the name Satan means. Why do I say Satan's not a personal name necessarily? I mean, I guess it could be, but it means accuser. The devil is there accusing. And this is the tricky part, all right? This is the tricky part. Those accusations can be true. I mean, they probably are true. That's what makes it so effective. The accusations are true. And he's going to step in, and he's going to be very quick to remind you of it. He's going to be very quick to listen to this, to recharge you with what God's already canceled. That's what the devil does. He recharges you with what God's already canceled. See, when you're forgiven, what does the Bible say about your sins in relation to God? Is he hanging on to it? What does he do with it? He casts it away into the sea of forgetfulness that he might not remember it against you anymore. That's what God does when your sin is forgiven. But the devil, like some kind of twisted golden retriever, is like diving out into the water, swimming through the sea of forgetfulness, trying to find your sin. And he's going to bring it back to you, and he's going to keep bringing it up. He's going to present it before you over and over again. He recovered your sin, brought it back to you so he could throw it in your face. He's going, remember when you did that? Do you remember when you lied yesterday? Do you remember when you cheated? Do you remember when when your character was demolished? Do you remember when you stole? Do you remember the way that you hurt those people? Some of you are constantly dealing with the accusations of the enemy and things that God has already forgiven you for and covered and cleared and thrown into the sea. And you're here this morning, and Satan, the devil, is whispering that in your ear right now. Now this is where it goes into overdrive. Because if that's not bad enough, look what else he does. Coupled with those accusations are lies and slander. Lies and slander. That's what the word devil means. If Satan means accuser, devil means a slanderer, a liar. And it's at this point that you begin to feel the teeth biting down around your neck when we get to this part. Because now he's telling you that thing you did that he's reaccusing you of, now he's telling you that God can't forgive you of that. He's telling you God never forgave you of that God cannot let it go, that you're never going to be right with him, you're never going to be enough for him, you're never going to please him, You went way too far this time. You crossed too many lines this time to come crawling back to God now. So you might as well give up. You might as well not go back to God. It's not going to work. And in that, I want you to know the devil is not just lying about you. The devil is lying about the Lord. The devil is lying about God and his character and his nature. And the devil is making light of the cross of Christ. He's belittling the suffering of Jesus. And he's telling you that God's provision just wasn't enough. Maybe it was for somebody, but it wasn't enough for you. And that is how the devil will step in and lie to you in the midst of your sin. But it's not just in your sin that the devil lies and slanders. It's also in your suffering. I want you to hear this. The devil will step in and lie and slander in the midst of suffering. And that's the context here. And here, when you undergo this suffering, particularly this persecution type suffering, but I think it applies to whatever that you're going through, in that context, he's lying about God like this. He's telling you God never loved you. God never cared about you. Notice Peter just got finished saying that we cast our anxieties on a God who cares for us. So what is the devil stepping in trying to say? God never cared about you. God never loved you. Or God was too small for you. You've heard the problem of evil before, right? The problem of evil basically stated says that if God was all powerful, he could stop evil from happening. And if he was all loving, he would stop evil from happening. And so because he doesn't stop evil from happening, then either he's not all powerful or he's not all good. Where do you think that lie came from? You say, well, that's philosophy. Yeah. Who's behind it? That's a slander of God from the devil. That's where that comes from. So it's accusations and slander. Why? We've already looked at it. That's how he devours your faith. He devours your faith. He does it to get you to give up. And I wonder this morning, in a room of this many people today, I wonder this morning, is there somebody that's on the verge of giving up? Is there somebody here today that's been listening to the lies of the enemy? Listening to the slander, listening to the accusations, believing it, not believing God in this moment, but believing the lies of the enemy. I want you to know this morning, none of it is true. It's not true. And even if his accusation against you is true, listen to me, the conclusion is not. Even if the accusation is true, the conclusion is not true. God is not done with you yet. You're alive. You have breath in your lungs this morning. He's not done with you. He did not give up on you. He never left you, regardless of what you might think, regardless of whether you saw him or not. He did not abandon you. He is not done with you. He is where he's always been. And anything else, I want you to know, however easy it is to believe that, anything else is just the stinking, hot, putrid breath of a liar. That's it. Number 3. This is the best part. How do we respond? How do we respond to the devil? I watched the craziest video this week. And I'd not heard this story before, but it's a guy in Idaho, I think it was. It was either Idaho or Iowa. Wherever it was more likely that he went hiking in a scenic place, wherever that is, probably Idaho. If you're from Iowa, I mean, I'm sure there's pretty places there too, but I think it was Idaho. So he's hiking down a trail in Idaho by himself, 20-something-year-old guy, I think, and he stumbles across a mama mountain lion with her cubs. And that's, I don't know, you might not know a lot about the outdoors, but you don't need to know much to know that's probably not a good thing to stumble across that, right? Like, when you see that, you know you probably might have messed up a little bit. So he gets his phone out to video, and he's okay, so just cut the tension, he's alive. But so he gets his phone out to film this encounter, and when he first turns his phone on, the mountain lion was probably, 100 yards away, 150 yards away down this trail, but you could see it. And then all of a sudden the thing turns and just starts galloping and running towards him. I was like, oh, no. And he got about, 15, 20 yards away, and he stopped. And, man, this poor guy doesn't know what to do, because what do you do? Because everything in your instinct in that moment, what would your instinct tell you in that moment? Your instinct would tell you, turn around and you better just take off running. Isn't that what you think you should do? Like, I will just turn around and run away. But every time he would begin, he had his camera the whole time, every time he would begin to turn around, that thing would lunge at him, snarling like it was about to come just leap and eat him. And if he would have tucked tail and turned around and ran, he would have been gone before he knew it. Like that thing would have covered the ground, come up, got him on the neck, and he'd be goner. And that would have been a very different video, all right? But instead of turning around and running, he resisted that urge, and he just starts backing up down this gravel kind of hiking trail. He's just slowly backing up. And you think, maybe I'll just back away from him. But it didn't work, because he would back up and the lion would just never got too crazy. The lion never got too agitated. He just sort of just comes right along, just stalking, prowling, praying after him. He's just backing up. And this happens for a little over 6 minutes. It was like the tensest video I have ever seen. Like this guy, and the whole time he tries a lot of different strategies as he's backing up. He's backing away. He's trying to like intimidate the thing. It's like, come on, man! Like you're not, I'm a big man. I'm a big man. I would encourage you, if you watch it, mute it, because there's a lot of choice language in the video, which I think we could probably understand where that was coming from. But nevertheless, so he's trying to intimidate. It didn't affect him one bit. I mean, he'd yell at it and he'd just come. Just keep walking, just stalking, slow like cats do. And he tried being sweet to it. It was like, oh, you're just a little kitty. Hey, little kitty. He's like, it's all right. It's okay, little kitty. I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to leave and go back to your kids. And just kept backing up. And finally, after 6.5 or so minutes of this, he finally stops, and I think he realizes what I'm doing is not working. He's going to continue to track me and stalk me until he kills me. And so I'm going to have to just make my stand. And so you see him, and he bends down, still looking, bends down, and he picks up a rock, and he swings the rock at the mountain lion. And guess what happened? That thing looked like it had been shot. I don't even know if he got hit by the rock or not, but whatever he did startled that thing so much, that thing leaps up, spins around, and just tears off. You see it just run as fast as it can down the trail away from this guy to where he found himself in safety. And the counterintuitive thing about this, what's counterintuitive about the whole encounter, was that as long as he retreated, listen to me, as long as he retreated, the lion kept coming. As long as he retreated, the lion kept coming. But the second that he stood his ground, the lion ran away. Now, I'm not telling you to do that if you encounter a mountain lion in the wild. I have no idea if that works every time or not. It probably doesn't, okay? So don't take this as my method, but it is my method for the devil, because I watched it and I thought, how perfect is this illustration? I want you to know this morning, you cannot get away from the devil. You cannot outrun him. You cannot run away from him. You cannot back away from him. You cannot intimidate him by speaking as you're running away. You cannot try to coax him with sweet words. Oh, hey, little kitty, devil, lion, whatever you are. It's not going to work. You cannot do it. You cannot run away. You cannot get away. He is a better pursuer than you are a runner. But here's the secret here. You do not have to run. You can resist. That's what Peter said. Peter's instruction here in verse 9 is resist him firm in your faith. What's the devil want to eat? Your faith. What does Peter say? Resist him firm in your faith. That means you take a stand down deep into your faith. You listen to me. Stop running. Start resisting. Stop running. Start resisting. Start resisting. James 4:7 says, resist the devil and he will flee from you. You have weapons that God has given you to face down the enemy. God has given you His Holy Spirit. God has given you prayer. And listen, God has given you His Word. How do you combat lies? How do you combat slander? How do you combat accusation? How do we resist? What are the weapons we use? Well, if lies are the devil's weapon, then truth is ours.
Yes.
We go back to truth, so that when the devil is hurling accusation and slander and lies at you in your sin, where do I go? I go to the gospel. That's where I go. I go to the good news. I go to the cross of Jesus Christ, where I find my grace, where I find my forgiveness, where I find my help. I remind the devil in those moments as I face him down that I might have sinned, but God has forgiven me in Jesus Christ. No one can snatch me out of his hands. When I face the slander and the lies of the enemy, the slander about who God is, the slander about who I am, because of suffering, because of sin, then where do I go? I meditate in the Word of God. I go to who God said He was, not who the devil said God was. Why would I listen to a liar about God? When he's slandering me, why would I listen to a liar? No, I go to the Word, where the Word tells me who I am in Christ. That's where I go. That's how I fight. Meditate on who the Word says God is. Meditate on who the Word says I am and you are. And I feel like I need to tell you this because Peter's writing not just to an individual, but a church. This whole letter's to a church. See, some of you are trying to face the devil by yourself, and you can, but it's much easier in community. It's much easier when you're surrounded by a lot of people that don't need to be scared of the devil. Use the community God's given you. You don't need to resist alone, because what you'll discover in your resistance is something you only discover when you resist. You only discover this when you resist. That the devil isn't really a lion. He's just like it. And he's got a big roar. He's got a big roar. But if you resist, you'll find it's all bark but no bite. It's bark but no bite. See, the only way the devil can eat your faith is if you let him. So don't let him. Make your stand. Resist the devil, and he will tear off down the trail away from you. I don't know what God's speaking to you about this morning. I don't know where you're at in this. I don't know what lies you've been believing from the devil. Maybe you're solid right now, and that's good. You can be, and praise the Lord if you are. But there could be some people here believing the lies. You've been listening to the devil. You've been listening to his slander, his accusations, his lies, that's the words of an adversary. God's saying, listen to me this morning. Listen to my word this morning. Listen to my spirit this morning. He's speaking into the aftermath in a different way than the devil. Oh, he loves you. He died to save you. He died that you could have abundant life. See, the gospel says that Satan, the devil, he comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Jesus said, I've come that they might have life and have it abundantly. Are you living abundantly right now? If you're not living abundantly, maybe. I'm not belittling your struggle today. I'm not belittling the things you're going through today. I get it. I understand. I got them. I've had them. Sometimes they're awful. But in the midst of the awfulness of it, it's only worse when we listen to a liar. You need to reject the devil. Resist the devil. Firm in your faith.